Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell. My guest today is Mr. Mark Steven Porro, and who's written a book that, if it had served in the military, would have a fat stack of medals across its chest. It is insane how many awards this man has won for his book, but it's called A Cup of Tea on the Commode, and we're going to get into a lot more than just that today because it is an incredible story in and of itself, but he's lived in a pretty broad and widely varied life. He's an industrial designer, an award-winning writer, an actor, a director. He's written screenplays and jokes and all sorts of other things. He's worked in television productions as well. And he's also now, as I said, an incredibly decorated award-winning author. So we will get into all of that. But before we do, just a couple quick announcements as usual. Those of you who have been listening for a while know that there is a pretty powerful story behind this podcast. So if you're new, go over to zachtidwell.com and read about what that is here. When you get there, if you are so inclined, you can join my mailing list to get updates about big projects that I have going on the scenes right now, and also book me for speaking engagements. I love doing that and would love to help out at your events any way that I can. And I've been doing it a lot and I love it. So you can reach out to me there. And other than that, if you are one of those people who's been listening for a while, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That helps grow the show. And if you prefer watching, you can head over to YouTube and do that too. But with all of that out of the way, Mark, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. All the way from the south of France.
Yeah, up in your chateau, your villa overlooking all the peasants and wine country.
All the little people, yeah, the drunk people hanging out on the cobblestone streets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it actually it is. It's a little village called Pézenas, and it's in the middle of the largest wine growing region in the world. So if you're into wine, it's great. If you're not, it's a freaking nightmare.
That's, I guess I was never a wine guy, but I was so into alcohol that I had to stop. So that may not be a spot that I visit. I was supposed to be out there last year and had some stuff come up that made me miss the trip, but I was wondering about that. I was like, how much of this is going to be, right, everyone's kind of getting drunk while we go on tours, and I'm the sober DD who can't see where I'm going. But
Yeah.
well, how how long ago did you move over there?
Well, I came here the first time in 2015, so a little over 10 years ago, and fell in love with this village. We stayed here. I stayed here with a friend, and we were thinking about buying a place as a rental unit and a vacation place whenever we wanted to come. And we spent 5 days in this little village, and I fell in love with the people were so nice. And the village is very cool. It's got political, architectural, and art history and theater history. And so I started looking around at the original place that drew us here ended up not being all that interesting. But
Wow.
it had a lot of other places that were very cool. And so I started looking around, and then I found the apartment that I'm in. And it's almost 500 years old. I put an offer, was accepted, and I didn't move here until it took at least 17 months to navigate through the French financial system. They like paper. We say paperwork. They love papier. And so it took quite a bit of time to finalize the deal. And then I came in September 2016, did some renovations, and then didn't finish renovations until the end of that year. So I moved here, I guess, officially in 2017.
Okay. Was all that, I guess, the jumping through hoops because you're an American citizen, or is it that way for French people as well?
I think my situation was a bit unusual. Yes, it was very difficult for an American to get a mortgage here, and then I found out once I got here that the seller was uh, not being very honest, and his notaire, which is the a lawyer that takes care of the transactions, was not very honest too. So they had to, my people on my side had to go through lots of bells and whistles and stuff to get through. And what was nice and felt very comforting, since it took so long, I had a lot of time to do research, and I felt very comfortable about France because the state really looks after the buyers and the sellers. So you have advocates, which are their attorneys on both sides, and they protect both sides. So I felt very comfortable that I wasn't going to get screwed over or something like that. So,
Yeah.
and there's been no issues since I've been here. The people are lovely. My French is still terrible, but they're very forgiving. And a lot of, at least my people in my village, want to learn English. So I think my true morals here is to teach them English.
That's funny, man. I went to Italy this year, and I would love to plan another trip to go back to France since I didn't get to go last year like I was supposed to. I mean, it's I've been kind of surprised because on one hand, I guess I came back from that trip and a trip to Costa Rica this year, and I was like, I need to do the digital nomad thing because I'm a software developer. I can do this anywhere. I don't know logistically what that would look like if I do undertake that because of the fact that I am completely blind and a lot of like I can't remember if Italy was this way, but I know in Spain when I was in Barcelona, there's no Ubers anywhere, so it's all taxis, and that kind of complicates things. Like technology is the big thing that allows me to be so independent like I am. Um,
Yeah.
but I was really kind of struck by how helpful people are, especially when you at least make an effort to try and speak. Like in Italy, it was if you say the most broken Italian possible, like people are just happy, like, okay, he's giving an effort and I want to help. But
Right.
it's do you do you still have a place over here?
I don't.
Okay.
I had a snack food company before I left the States, and we built a factory out actually out in Los Angeles. So that was the last thing that I owned because I actually built an apartment above the factory to help save money for the company. And we sold that, I think, a couple years ago. And so that's my last holding. I think our family owns some commercial buildings in New Jersey where I grew up. My brother handles all that stuff. So I don't know all the details, but I think he owns something there, which would be nice. A nice surprise.
That feels very like industrial revolution-esque to having the founder living in an apartment above the factory.
Yeah, keep that quiet. I don't know if it, since it was a commercial area, I don't know if that was cool.
Yeah.
But you do what you got to do for the company. So I made some sacrifices. And it was a great apartment. I mean, I had a nice place. And obviously, with the snack food company, my kitchen was very large. So it was very cool.
That is cool. I actually, this is a perfect segue into, I was very curious. I like to know how things work with the industrial design side of things. I mean, you got your degree in industrial design, but what all did that work take you to do? Like what facet of industrial design were you doing?
Well, all right. So I went to Ohio State originally for medicine. From eighth grade on, I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And I didn't think about it that much at the time, but that was my focus to go to medical school. And Ohio State, I had an older sister going there when I was in I think the eighth grade, and I visited her, and I really liked the school. And so that was my original goal. But in freshman year, I had a very strong creative side. I can blame my mom for some of that. And so I loved the arts. I loved math and science, but the arts were a really powerful part of me. And so when I decided to leave medical school, I didn't actually get into medical school. Still my freshman year. I just looked through the curriculum book and I saw industrial design, which married math, science, and art. And I thought, wow, how lucky! And at the time, they happened to be one of the top three schools in the country. And so that was very cool. So I specialized in visual communications. So at the time, that was doing logos and brochures and art direction and things like that. And then that evolved into websites and all that kind of stuff, interactive things. But I also had experience, designing furniture and renovating homes and things like that. So it spread out quite a bit because in the first year you're exposed to all disciplines of design, and then you decide where you want to focus. So two-dimensional was where I kind of focused, but I still had a great love of all dimensions, I guess, in design.
Yeah, that sounds, I guess like today it sounds like the maybe the side that you went into on one hand specifically on the software side would be like what is now UX design and
Yeah.
people go to school for all that stuff. But it is just I feel like I because it just that feels like a field where it is if you are into it, it would be endless learning, which would be just I mean, it's like there's always something else for you to soak up. It's so cool. And
Right.
I was curious on one hand with how all that worked, but also because you had started businesses and what you just said about creating that factory, I was like, I didn't know if because I know some of it is more so design on that side of the spectrum as well. So I didn't know if that all tied into that, but it seems like it certainly probably played into what you've done as a creator.
Yeah, I think all of it, especially let's say in the factory. So I designed the factory. I had to customize a lot of the equipment. I bought equipment and then customized it for our. We had a very unique product, and so all the equipment had to be customized. So that my design experience certainly kicked in there. Um, and I happened to work for one of the top agencies or design firms we called it back then in the country, and we had I was good and very fortunate, but we had some absolute geniuses working in product design, and so and interior design, and then we got into the graphics, and then you got into computer graphics and things like that, and I was just fortunate to be around these very, very bright people because you absorbed it all, and it was lovely. I had really good experience, but then I gave that all up to move out to Hollywood to jump into the very secure life of uh, as an actor. So
Yeah, and I want to jump into that here in a second. I'm kind of curious here. I recently had one of the co-creators of Siri, like the voice assistant on the iPhone, Adam Chire on, and he worked at the Stanford Research Institute for a while because he specialized in AI stuff. But and this was all back in the 90s before AI was even a blip on the map.
yeah,
But he talked about this just the culture is very similar to what you were just saying, just surrounded by geniuses and everyone there with that having that hunger to soak up things and innovate. And it seems like there's you're kind of speaking along the same lines. Like what it, I guess on one hand, is that how that tends to be in that industry of industrial design? Is it, I mean, it is a bunch of powerful minds coming together where there is that almost air of like romance to the creation, or is it different?
I don't think it's the profession. I think it's the individual.
Okay.
My dad was a chemist and a very creative and innovative guy, so he came up with some really cool things, and always trying to find something, to make a better paperclip kind of guy.
Okay.
And so as a kid, I invented some things. I talk about one of them in the book. Cling Free, I think, is still the product to remove static electricity from your clothes. If you forget to put a fabric softener in the washing machine, you could throw a Cling Free towel in the dryer. And especially living back east in the wintertime, boy, we had static electricity all over the place. Um, and as a kid, I did a lot of laundry because I had five siblings, and there were piles and piles of laundry. And both of my parents worked full time, so sometimes we had to take things into our own hands. So I did a lot of laundry, and if I forgot to put fabric softener, I would put fabric softener on a piece of towel and let it dry, and then threw that in the dryer. And this was years before Cling Free or any of those static removers came to
Wow.
play. And that all came, I think, from the kind of stuff that my dad did. And then I found out when doing family research for the book, my great grandfather had a Model A Ford. This is the guy that came over from Italy in 1891. And he had a Model A Ford, and they didn't have garages back then. So he took that thing, dismantled the thing completely, put it in the basement. And then when
What?
time came up, put it back together again. And then he would take his kids, or the kids, I guess, and maybe grandkids at that point, and they would take him up. He had a farm way up on Long Island. And for that trip, he would um, uh, uh, could take cans of pork and beans and strap it to the exhaust pipe underneath the car. And by the time they got to their destination, he would serve them the cans of warmed pork and beans.
That is cartoonish. Just
Yeah, but very practical. I mean,
yeah.
you got all that energy. Let's use it for something, and it was fabulous. I mean, so these things are kind of in my genes, as my dad would say. I was given some good genes. So
Yeah.
I think when I read that description of industrial design, it was like a perfect profession for me to start out. And I still do design. Years later, it kept food on the table during the droughts in acting, and it actually opened some nice acting doors for me because I would design for some various people in Hollywood, and that would get me to meet people and make those connections, and that helped me get more acting work and stuff, which was great.
Yeah. And I promise you I'm going to come back to this again. But I think you said something there. It's obvious there's the creative side in your family. What was and I was gonna wait to ask about your mom until later because for people listening, that is what the cup of tea on the commode is about. Is you ended up caring for your mom in her final years and actually taking on that role yourself as opposed to farming that out to a long-term care facility or something like that. But just while we're on this kind of creative through line that is in your guys' genes, is it what did she do? Because you said she worked full time.
My mom was a proofreader for the
Okay.
largest newspaper in New Jersey. So, um, and she did that. I mean, she loved doing that. She was in the her father was in the printing business, and originally she wanted to be a veterinarian, but her father, and this was like in the 30s, her father said, no, that's a man's job. Unfortunately, and my mother loved animals and always loves animals, and so she went into the printing business. So she started proofreading and got her degree in that. And then she became a shopaholic, I think. So she had to support her addiction. And so the working full time was, she loved doing it and doing crossword puzzles and all that kind of stuff. But she also loved shopping. So she had to uh, support that addiction of hers.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious if that also that if that all came together into the melting pot that like led you down these paths because it's just I'm really fascinated by that dichotomy between nature and nurture, especially in something like this where there's undeniably something in your genes where there people thinking a little bit differently. But so you left all of that security and what does sound like it was probably very intriguing work to go to Hollywood. What led to all of that?
Well, again, I have to blame my mother. So very early on, and we were exposed to a lot of culture and stuff in New York City, and we were about 20 minutes away from New York City. And my mother was also a big fan of the ballet. So my older brother and all three sisters were all into the ballet, and my brother and sister were like little stars, and they were performing with the Royal Danish Ballet in Lincoln Center when I was about 7 years old. And I went backstage to see them, and it was like a funny Hollywood type story. So I'm in the dressing room with them, and some guy bursts through the door and he says, "Hey, we need another little kid," and he locks eyes with me. And apparently I was the right size and age. And he says, "Kid, you ought to be in the show." And I hesitated. I wasn't sure what to say. And he says, "And we'll pay you." And I went, "Now we're
Ching. Yeah.
so I'm now a professional dancer. I got a great costume. And I got to perform with my brother and sister and a bunch of other kids, and it was lovely. So my debut was in Lincoln Center, and then I performed
Wow.
with ballet for a number of years. But I said I officially retired at 11, and then didn't get back into, I guess, that creative bug until 1984, and so that's when I moved out to Hollywood. But I did have a design job waiting for me. I had a really good portfolio and really good experience at that point, and I was, I think, 27 when I moved out to Hollywood. So I had a job waiting for me and an agent, because I did some modeling and commercials in Columbus. And actually, I auditioned for a Robert Redford film that was being filmed in Ohio through my model agency. So that was my first, I guess, taste of Hollywood. And it was scary, but I loved it. I had to go in and audition. I had no idea what I was doing. They give you the audition, they call the side. So you have the script and they ask you to, play this part. And so I didn't get the part, but I loved it. I loved it was just scary as heck. I was, I didn't know what I was doing, but I liked the thrill of the whole thing. And so I think that
Yeah.
kind of helped, I guess, wet my whistle to go out in Hollywood. And so, it was fun. L.A. at that time, so in the early '80s, mid '80s, if you had any ambition, there was so much you could do there. So I loved being there, and I again having a full-time job, and then I studied acting at night. From day one, I got right into an acting class. And so I worked my tail off doing that stuff. But I also had ambition to start other companies because I thought, oh my gosh, we can do this. I can do this. I have some creativity and some ambition. So acting and design wasn't enough. And so it was fun. But my goal was to get on a good TV show. I wanted to be a good actor, and that's why I started studying right away. And my goal was to get on Hill Street Blues. And less than 2 years later, I was on Hill Street Blues.
Whoa.
Uh,
Did,
it,
did,
it was pretty cool.
yeah, did that was there an uh sense of like, damn, I made it?
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, here's the thing. So the first week of working on union jobs. So I got my SAG card, and then I did actually an independent film that same week. So I worked on one night, and that went into way into overtime. So if you're doing a union job and it goes in overtime, you get incredible money compared to what you do in the regular day. And so we went into like double golden time, something like that. So I made really good money. I at least doubled whatever I was supposed to make that day. And then I also got Hill Street Blues that same week. And so that also went into my double golden time. So that's what I'm sitting there going. So the first week I'm working, I'm making a couple of grand. And that's what I'm thinking. Oh, yeah, I got this Hollywood thing down.
But yeah,
And then I didn't work again for 7 months.
there's serious peaks and valleys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's why you have to. That's why a lot of my friends had to wait tables and do stuff because if you want to eat and you want to pay your rent. So luckily, I still had design work that I did. I never waited tables unless I was playing the role of a waiter. Much better pay when you're doing that. And yeah, so you got to really love it because there's a lot of peaks and valleys throughout the whole career.
Yeah, and that's really creative professions in general. Maybe not in having that the peaks and valleys like that, but there's a creativity tax on those kinds of professions where or the passion tax, I guess is the better phrase there, where that's where the idea of the starving artist comes from and all of that, where it's you see that whether it's in I feel like graphic design's a big one, but more so even like more creative stuff like this, where you are an actual you see it in like game designers or acting and other, even like people taking their own like videography into their own hands and things like that. And it feels kind of pure, but it is pure, but it's also like unfortunate that that's part of it. But I feel like it's also it's a big filter mechanism, which I think is like for you to have in 2 years ended up on this big show that you wanted to be on, like that's the grind that had to go on between there and the sacrifices that had to be made. I feel like that sets the stage to culminate in a very powerful way that most other jobs don't really have.
Yeah, there's lots of times I'd say, like in those the dead periods where nothing's happening, and when you go, oh, I hate this thing, and then you get a call saying, oh, you've got an audition for a small part on this soap opera, and you're going, of this business. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. So that it's almost like when you're playing golf, you're hitting in the 90s or something, but you get that one shot that just it feels so good. You go, okay, I'm going to give this a few more years of this most frustrating sport. So if you hit those things, but I got to tell you a fun story on Hill Street Blues. So we're working very late. I'm playing a district attorney, assistant district attorney, and in the courtroom, there's a bunch of people they call extras, all sitting in to fill up the court to make it look like it's really happening. And so the actors get to take a break, but everybody in the courtroom sits there waiting. And we're going into 10, 11 hours. And there was one gentleman in his 80s, and I'm looking at him all day, and he is just having the best time. And so I finally went and sat with him during one of these breaks late into the evening. And we chatted, and then I said, I'm kind of hinting, don't you have something better to do? You're in your 80s and you're sitting here, it's hot and you're under the lights. He says, no, I just love being around you young, creative people. It just fills me with energy and stuff. And as we were talking, he says, oh, and by the way, my daughter owns this studio. I'm saying, who's your daughter? It's Mary Tyler Moore. It was MTM Studios, and I didn't put the connection together until he introduced me to it.
Wow.
And he just loved hanging around because it kept him close with Mary. And I never met her, but I loved her dad. He was a great guy, and at that point they were doing Hill Street Blues and Saint Elsewhere, and I think there were a couple other shows, and then eventually Seinfeld was filmed on those studios. So it was a great place, and it would happen to be about right around the corner from where I lived at the time. So it was very handy.
Wow. See, that's like with you, with him is what that's the kind of person, like, I want to know what makes your brain tick. I feel like the wisdom that it takes to just, for him to just make that decision. Like, yeah, I'm going to sit here for an 11-hour day purely just out of the joy, whatever I'm able to extract out of that is so, it's admirable. But I want to know, like, what leads you to do that other than, yes, I mean, I feel like everyone can understand, yeah, this is my daughter's thing and I'm in a unique opportunity to be able to be here and be a part of it all. But it's some people's minds fascinate me, and it's like you too, but I guess I haven't had any actors on here, and I've always been curious. So on one hand, and we don't like need to go through the whole schooling, but the, something that made me think about this recently. So I like will not dance. Uh, I can't dance. I'm just, it's not my thing. But recently had to go out with some friends for someone's birthday, and they made me dance, and I was like, so. It took like 10 minutes, and then I stopped being self-conscious of myself, throwing things around in space where I don't know where I'm at. And how much of it with acting, on one hand, it's that, but it's also, I see a lot of, whether it be comedians or music artists and things like that, crossing over into acting. Like, and it's made me wonder, because those are very similar. For those people to be on stage, they have to just be like, yeah, I don't really care what you think, kind of thing. Not in the sense that they're not critical of themselves, but like that, where that self-consciousness can kind of be turned off to some degree. How much of acting, in terms of like doing it well, is that like that feels like that doing, me going out and dancing and being uncomfortable is very different. No one is actually paying attention to me, even though it feels like it. Whereas you acting, everyone is paying attention to you while you're doing that.
Yeah. I'd have to say, in theater, it's very different because you're working with other actors, and you can feel if something's working and becoming really special because you're connecting with them, and you can also feel the audience. You feel their energy and whether they're with you or they're not with you. I did stand up for a little bit too, and you really have to read the room and feed off their energy. I was never. I would watch a lot of the other people get up and get heckled, and then the comedian would attack the heckler and stuff. I fortunately was never heckled, but if somebody was making noise or trying to interrupt the show at some point, I would just direct the show to them because I felt like they want attention. I'm going to give you attention, so I'm going to give you a private show right here. And then it shut right up because it was like I became their friend. I was like, all right, so if you need some attention, let me, give you this joke and see. But I never cut anybody down or anything like that. And so
Mm.
all that kind of comes into play when you're working live on on film or on TV. Boy, it can be really difficult, especially if you're not the star of the show or the episode of the movie, because you don't get all the takes the stars get if they want. I want to do it again. I'll
Oh.
do it again. And sometimes you get one shot, and if it's not good, they'll just cut away from you in the editing room. So there's a lot of pressure, especially if you have something very emotional or some very, let's say, intricate moves to get from one spot to another spot for the camera. And if you blow it, it can be tough if you have some real difficult, let's say, directors or I've worked with some. I don't think I ever had a difficult director, but I have had some actors I had to work with that I would never want to work with them again. You do your best to make it work, but boy, I got to a point actually where I got cast in three, a movie, a play, and I think and a TV show all around the same time where the person I was working opposite were just absolute horrible people. And I was just thinking, oh man, if this is going to be my career where I've got to put up with this all the time, I don't know if it's worth it. It should be more fun. And there are other times that you experience, and it is fun. But boy, I just got hit with like three in a row, and that really made me think about if I want to do this or not.
Yeah, that seems like that's probably part of that world. I mean, unfortunately, as you get bigger and bigger, if you're not very self-aware, that ego is going to get pumped up along with your name. And it, it seems like on one, that's like another kind of paying your dues thing, just having to put up with the intolerable people and like, it's like another filtering mechanism. But that knowing that pressure, I guess, in terms of being on a film set as opposed to live acting, is that part of the thrill of it? Is okay, I have this one shot, or this work is going to be for nothing. Like, yes, I'm going to get paid, but it's not going to result in the success that I want, whether it be being included in that one scene in the movie or that episode.
I would have to say, well, yeah. I mean, you got to love it. You got to love all of it. So if you go in and say, listen, this is, you see those, or you grow up watching all these movies about Hollywood, and you kind of had an idea what you're going with. But as you get more experience, you learn some of the tricks. There are people, and I don't want to slam all of Hollywood, but there are
Do it.
stars. Well, they have some fragile egos, and they'll do some tricks. So if you're doing, let's say, a scene with just the two of you, so it's a two shot, and if they think you're a really good actor, they'll maybe mumble their lines. So you want to meet them at their level. So then you start mumbling your lines. And then when it goes into the editing room, they'll say, we don't hear that guy, but the star we have to bring back because we need to hear his lines. So we'll go with his close up instead. And he can add the dialogue at the end, they call ADR, later. And since you're not a star, or they didn't need you in that scene, they can cut away from you. And there's like, And you go, are you serious? People do that? And they go, oh, yeah, yeah, I got to watch out for this particular one or this particular one and stuff like that. So there are little tricks they do. But the good people, I did a film with, I was in Castaway, I had a small part in Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Okay.
This guy is just delightful. He hung out on the set with us in between. I was the navigator. I actually replaced the navigator in the crash sequence. And so I worked 3 days on that. And you hear all these different stories, but everything you heard about Tom Hanks is true. He's a delightful guy, certainly a good actor. But he hung out in the set. He liked being around other actors and shooting the breeze and all that business, and it was great. I've been on other shows and stuff where the star comes on, does his thing, and then they immediately leave. They can't be seen chatting with anybody. And there's, so you go, okay, I know that, I understand that. So you just have to accept it and make the best of it. There was another show. I did a TV show where one of the stars of the show, was supposed to try to seduce me.
Nice.
So she would do a little bit. She wouldn't rehearse. And then when they said, action, she would do a faint, maybe seduction or something. And the director would say, cut. So and so, can you come on, goose it up a little bit? You're trying to, seduce this guy. And she goes, oh, really? People don't do that anymore. And it was like, and I'm dealing with, and I've got to make this scene work as best I can. And she was just horrible. And she never did what she was supposed to do. And she was miserable. And she never chatted with me in between takes. Nothing. No connection, none whatsoever. And it's like, oh, yeah, yeah. But I was getting paid, good money. So you say, okay, that's fine. And also that was early in my career. So you live and learn. And also I was warned by the casting director of that show. She said, okay, just so you know, the two stars of the show are going through an actual divorce, and they're miserable.
Whoa.
And they're making everybody on the set miserable. So she says, you do your scene and get back to your trailer. And it was so true, because you're sitting there going, oh, come on, really? These are all professionals. No, there was so much tension on that set in the entire time I was there. So you don't want to get caught up in those things.
That's weird, because then you're acting to act as well. Like there's acting that predates the actual acting that's going on. That is just the disgusting side of that doesn't shock me. I mean, that is kind of what I feel like that paints the picture that everyone expects to hear of the egos and but the like sabotaging other people is freaking wild.
Yeah, there's probably more of that I know of, but there was a few that I heard, and you go, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's overall, I had a great time. I was exposed to a lot of you have that whole fantasy, just walking on sets and the back lots. And there were a couple times I had auditions for big TV shows. And so I would sneak on to the back lot just to be on the set, to absorb the environment that I thought would help me in my audition. And it was very cool. There was another show, not Hill Street Blues, but another one, might have been LA Law or NYPD Blue, I think. So I snuck it. I hung out on that set for a couple hours because I had a big audition the next day for it. And it was just fun. Me alone in that set. It was really fun. And the last thing that I did in Hollywood, one of the last things, my dad was visiting me. So a year before he passed, he was visiting me in LA. And I was working on actually a design project that went late into the night. And so my client brought her boyfriend along. And so my dad and he stayed up all night with us, but they were in the living room chatting and stuff like that. And so the next day he calls up and says, hey, I do lighting for Seinfeld, and we have a special VIP walk-on part that your dad could be right for. Would your dad like to be on Seinfeld? And this is the time where Seinfeld, I think, was number one, definitely number one as far as comedy. And my dad sat and thought about it, and 90,000 actors would go, yeah, I'm going to be on that show. And I had a lot of friends are on the show. A good friend of mine was the Soup Nazi. And so So, my dad, he said, "Yeah, I like Jerry. I'll do that." And they invited me to join them. And I thought, I'm a union actor. I really shouldn't do this. But they said, "Don't worry about it. We don't work that way. We're a little different. So, if there's a part that's right for you later on, you're still, able to do that." And so I appeared on Seinfeld with my dad. And
Gosh.
it's very cool. So, not many opportunities like that come up. So the Hollywood had some really fun things for me.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing to be able to have that time capsule and like go back to and see you and your dad on the show, but probably also remembering actually recording with him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And this whole time, I know you've mentioned a couple times you were designing, but is this when you started writing and all of those other starting to go down these other paths as well?
Well, early on, one of the things in Hollywood you do, you try to write your own work, a part that's right for you, whether it's a play or a scene or a screenplay or movie or something like that. So early on, I had you take audition classes and things like that. And this one particular class, the gentleman said it's a 6-week course. The 6th week, you're going to write a scene, cast it, and have it performed in class. And I'm like, oh my gosh. At that point, I wrote funny music and did some things, but never thought writing was something serious. And so I said, this is Hollywood. This is the big time. This was scary as heck. So I wrote a scene and I cast it. And these two guys, it was a phone conversation. And these two guys did a great job with it. And the response was fabulous. And I said, wow, I'm hooked. So I like this. So that's what actually got me into writing and then eventually writing short films and then writing screenplays. And I had one short film that I wrote and I ended up directing, and I was also in it. That won an award, a comedy award for it. It was a parody on Law and Order, and that's what
Oh,
uh,
okay.
it's Law and Order Sport Utility Vehicle. And I actually had a friend who was one of the executive producers of all of them. And when they came out with SVU, Special Victims Unit, everybody called it SUV. And I just started thinking, oh, wouldn't it be funny if the entire show was shot inside an SUV? And so that's what I wrote. And it's a parody on that with the sound effects and the murder and the investigation and the whole courtroom scene happens inside an SUV.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun.
That is awesome. I'm gonna have to go try and listen to that. Obviously, it won't capture the fact that it's in an SUV, but
SUV,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, you'll
okay,
you'll hear the when that sound, the gung.
yeah,
Every time someone opens the door, that's what makes that sound in my.
okay.
You'll hear a door slam and then gung, and whenever that happens, everybody inside the SUV is looking for that sound to find out what it means, because nobody knows what it means in the dots.
That is awesome.
I give it meaning.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to go check that out for sure, and I'll send that around to my dad and to some of my friends because I'm sure people will get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
With you touched on or I guess it made it sound like that taking or that the course that actors often go down where they start writing their own stuff being that you're writing a scene for yourself. Is that actually the intent, or was that something you were aware? I know you had an assignment where you had to, but is that something that is like a conscious decision where you're trying to literally create work for yourself in the industry?
I'm not sure if that was the intent originally. I would write, let's say, monologues that I wanted to perform for auditions.
Hmm.
So there was, I guess, the intent was, yes, that will get me more work. Um, um, yeah, but I mean, a lot like Chaz Palminteri, who wrote, oh, now I can't even think of the film with Robert De Niro. That was a one man show that he did. And actually saw him in a one man show. Boy, I can't even think of the film now. Anyway, that made him a star. Robert De Niro's people came and saw that one man show when he was performing it in New York. And De Niro said, I want to produce this and I want to be in it. And
Jeez.
so yeah, there's a lot of stories like that where people came out of nowhere and because they couldn't get work. Well, you have Sylvester Stallone with Rocky. He couldn't get good. He did some things, Lords of Flatbush, I think, believe, and stuff like that. And but he wrote Rocky for him, and Hollywood didn't. They wanted the script, but they didn't want him, and so he turned down. I think the rumor goes $1 million because he said, "No, I'm going to be in this thing," and so he created his own career. So
That's incredible.
a lot of people have done that.
Yeah. And again, this kind of ties back to what I said about like, yeah, your story definitely does of the just the wide breadth of talent and how you're able to fill all these different roles from writing to the acting to a screenplay versus or a short film versus an actual play and even then stepping into directing like what and it also comes back to which you ended up fitting into as well like where I said comedians or music artists are able to do all of that too like that versatility is that something that kind of comes with the territory of getting into that? Do you think that is something that is born out of those skills developing over time and kind of how they complement each other? Or is this like, is there a kind of person that that seems to just be a fit there as opposed to developing the skills purely?
I would have to say it's the individual.
Hmm.
So you have, let's say, I don't sing, so I'm not a triple threat.
Okay.
Not a very good dancer after I retired. So there are people who are triple threats. There's a lot of really good actors who have amazing voices. You know, they did musical theater and all that kind of stuff, which is sometimes a surprise to other people. But let's say De Niro. I mean, he did sing, I think, in New York or something. But he's not a dancer or whatever. And I don't think he writes. He
Okay.
certainly has, I'm sure, some opinions about some of the roles he's playing and making some adjustments to the screenplay. But um, I think that part of it might be necessity. There is, I guess, a lot of downtime. I mean, you try to, I studied most of the time I was in. I was out there for 28 years. And for most of that time, you're in one acting class or not, or some kind of acting or improv, or like I said, I did stand up for a bit. That was a different discipline. It's like working out in the gym. Your muscle is your body and your voice and stuff, and you got to keep it active and keep it in shape. So that's why you do all those other things. But the writing is, I guess, that wasn't my intent originally, but then you really think about it, you go, maybe it was. Um,
Mhm.
but again, if you're creative and you got all these things, in your head, you got to get them out. So it's either going to be acting on stage or in a show or a movie or writing it down and doing it that way. So it's just another way to express yourself.
Yeah. I mean, 28 years out there. Was your mom what ended up taking you away from there?
Well, she was back in New Jersey, living in the house we all grew up in. So I left when I left for college. I never really lived back home.
Mhm.
Come back for summer breaks the first couple of years, but I think after sophomore year, that was about it. And so I lived in Ohio for a while before going out to Hollywood. So, but what was nice about that is when my parents came out and visited, they either sometimes together, sometimes by themselves. I would have them all to myself. So I got to know them in a whole different way than I think some of my other siblings. And it was very cool. I had a great relationship with both of them. I got them, they came from that generation that didn't express their feelings too much. They really held their cards close to the vest and stuff like that. And I got them both to open up, whether it was, I don't know if it was the acting thing or more curiosity about family history and things like that. And so they both, I think, felt very comfortable. Well, maybe they weren't so comfortable, but they did open up to me about a lot of things. And some of those things made it into the book, and other things will make it into the next book, which is going to focus more on my father. And So a lot of that, I think, also came out of Hollywood because I like to record family history. So I would take notes and ask questions. And with this 3.5 years that I had with my mom in her last years, I was privy to some really uh, lovely moments and interesting conversations. And she had certainly some, she was suffering a little bit of from dementia. So she had some pretty interesting visions. And
Mm.
I didn't want my siblings to miss out on that stuff. So I started recording, and I didn't know if it was going to be a book. Normally, I would think, okay, how can I make this into, this could be a very cool movie. Um, and so I just started taking notes and a lot of videos and photographs and things like that, not knowing exactly what form it would take. And then eventually I set on, I think a book is going to be the best thing to share the story, but also I think it could be helpful to others who may have to go through it or have been through it and want to look at a different perspective, especially from a son's point of view. And so that's when the book came about.
And that's such a beautiful reason to start it all, was you didn't want your siblings to miss out on that.
I hope they appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, they better. But are you guys close?
Yeah, well, some of them about as close as I have I would have to say my family are my best friends. I never had a lot of, let's say, a best friend or so that was outside of the family. So whether it was my folks or my siblings, so my younger sister, three of us went to Ohio State, which is kind of weird, but uh, go Bucks! We love the both teams doing great.
Go
Um,
Wolverines, man.
okay, stop. We don't talk. Yeah, well, yeah. I don't want to beat them while they're down. That would be unfair. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty messy up there.
Hmm.
So
And so both your parents grew up during the Depression, right? Or at least right
yeah,
after? Okay.
yeah.
Gosh, I just recently had a guy on here named Dr. John Graham, similar, his parents also grew up around that time. This is, you and him are the only time that I think I've ever talked to someone who was raised by, I guess, or where the conversation got to that point of analyzing. And maybe some of that's, because I'm older now, like recognizing the value of hearing those stories. It just, I mean, some of this, the few little like tidbits he gave of his parents' childhoods and like information that he learned about as an adult were freaking. I mean, that was a horrifying time, and I don't think anyone realized that. But just how bad, also that carries downstream as those who were children during that time then become adults, and the fact that like your dad became a chemist and it sounds like he was kicking ass. Sounds like everyone in your family was kind of kicking ass. And it's just, again, it's people I would have loved to talk to. But with, with your mom, did she get diagnosed with something, or was there just okay, she's starting to decline and you stepped in?
Well, she just turned 89. So this whole thing happened. She just turned 89, and she was living in the house that we all grew up in, and we had a family living upstairs that were overseeing household duties and doing the shopping and the cooking and things like that. And my mom could still walk, and I think she wasn't driving anymore. And they were supposed to keep her company, and they did not get along, and we didn't know how bad it was. I noticed some tension when I'd come visit. But my mother, I say, had a very accurate BS detector. And if that thing went off, it was very tough trying to get her trust back. And this thing, I think, redlined pretty early. But she was, the alternative was go into assisted living or something like that. She was in assisted living for about 4 years before she moved back home. But she had a dog who was her most, I think, faithful child um, that she adored, and the dog apparently bit somebody in the assisted living place, and they had a zero tolerance. So they said the dog has to go, and of course, mom says that the dog goes, I go with it. So they came back home. Luckily, we still had the family house. and it needed some work. So we got it fixed up. She moved back in, and we had family move in upstairs. And but I think she was not happy. She did suffer from some depression throughout her life, but she hid it very well. Uh, but she had, I found out later, her mother committed suicide, and her uncle, the brother of her mother, committed suicide.
Mhm.
One of them, the uncle did it when she was 11, and that really affected her. And then her mother did it, I think, when she was like 22. No, actually, I think around 26. So it was right before she was getting married. And her mother was not happy, and not happy with, I guess, my mother to do it that close to the marriage. So,
Yeah.
uh, and she kept that from most of us until her later years when we discovered it. And so she carried that burden with her. And as we get older, I think, our filters fade. And so she would let some things out. And so she was grumpy sometimes and not all that pleasant to be around. And as you get older, I guess, she was, whether it was, I think, dementia. And later on, we had a doctor that said they thought she had some early Alzheimer's. At that point, she was in her 90s. I said, listen, she's in her 90s. I mean, let's give her a break. But
Yeah.
overall, she was pretty good. But she had some interesting visions. But at this particular time, I think she looked around and said, if this is my life, I'm done. I'm not happy, and I don't want this to linger. So she kind of willed herself just to go, because she just shut down. There was no medical reason, no pain or anything like that. And a doctor never came and saw her, just said, call hospice. She's transitioning, let her go, cut off all meds and food. And that's it. So hospice came on board. And when hospice comes, the ending is usually not good. And
Yeah.
so we all flew home, and she was non-responsive. She did actually respond a little bit to touch, but she didn't speak. She never left the bed. She didn't eat, obviously, because that was part of the deal. And that was it. And so it was a steady stream of hospice nurses coming in. And my younger sister and I um, hung out with hospice because we wanted to learn how to take care of our mother for as long as mom wanted to be there. We didn't know if it was going to be days or weeks or what. So we learned all these tips and tricks from hospice, and they were very generous in letting us kind of do everything. So that was very cool. And I think my mom sensed that after a while that love was back in the house, and she started responding more and opening her eyes a little bit. But there was this one rebel nurse. The directive was no food, no drugs, no food, leave her in bed, and let her go. And so this one nurse came in and she read the directive. And we discovered that the hospice nurses all kind of prescribe their own medicine. And so
Yeah.
this one nurse comes in and she goes, I got it. And she walks right into my mother's room and says, Mrs. Porro, are you hungry? And my mother's eyes shot open like a dinner bell rang.
Oh.
And it was first time in weeks. It's like, what are you doing? And then the lady accuses us of trying to starve our mother to death.
Uh,
And so we got very upset with her and said, call your supervisor. You broke the rules. And so the supervisor said, yeah, go. You broke the rules. We'll send another nurse in. But in the meantime, I'm thinking, well, maybe the hospice got it wrong. And my mother was, hungry. So I went in feeling very guilty and asked my mom if she, in fact, did want something to eat. And she says, well, what do you got? And those were her first words in weeks. So,
wow.
well, anything you want. And this is March now. This whole thing started like the first week of February. Now we're into March. And she says, well, how about some pumpkin pie? And I said, well, it's not really pumpkin pie season, but my brother lived close by. So I went in and asked him to go out and see if you could find some pumpkin pie. He came back within probably 30 minutes with two fresh pumpkin pies. I don't know where he got them. I don't know if he baked them himself or what, but I went in and I gave my mom a spoonful, and it was her first food in weeks. So she spit out the first one. I said, oh, well, it didn't go so well. Second spoonful did, and she ended up downing like half the pie. The color came back in her face. She was wide awake, and she was back. It was lovely. So I don't know if it was a sugar rush or whatever, but that was like perfect medicine. So this rebel nurse really did help out by breaking the rules. And so the next day I gave her the other half of the pumpkin pie. And then the next day, I think she polished off an entire pie. And then we moved on to other things, heavy sugar things, but
Yeah.
she wanted. So we said, listen, you're back from the dead. So whatever you want, you get. And so that's how it started. And I started looking around. I stayed with her for several weeks, and wanted to make sure she was really up and doing well. She was still bedridden, but at that point we got a wheelchair. We would take care of her, and you know, we're gonna. At that point, did we get it? I think a few weeks later is when the whole Commode thing came into the, uh, which became the title of the book. But at that point, she was still in diapers, or she was in diapers the whole time. But
Mhm.
she was in diapers, and we changed those diapers while she was in bed. Another tip that we learned from hospice. And so I started looking around and saying, you know, my mom deserves better. And at that point, my brother, who lived close, was taking care of all the finances and medications and doctor's appointments and all that stuff. And so I wanted to take some of the burden off his shoulders, and I had to play a bigger role. So and that got the wheels moving. And so then I planned on moving back to my childhood home.
Oh, and that you commented on it, basically the fact that she had decided she was done. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, you see that very common when couples are still together in their elder years and one passes.
Yeah.
A lot of times the other one will pass, like very shortly after, start declining and then pass. And it feels like for some reason at the later years, you are literally able to will yourself out of existence. I wonder if there's any research on what that is, if there's something biologically that changes that allows that to occur. Because, I shot myself in the face in 2019. Very obviously didn't want to be here and hadn't wanted to be there for some time. But I couldn't have just willed myself out of existence. It not in the same sense. Yeah, I guess you could starve yourself if we're really going to go down like the get nitpicky on it, but not in the sense of I you go unresponsive. And again, maybe that was some of that she's hearing you guys and she's just choosing not to respond, almost like she's protesting almost. But it's you mentioned her almost or suspecting that she felt love in the air. Did you feel like, other than obviously seeing her color change and her come back, was there any sort of, you get that, and I'm not trying to sound woo woo here, but sometimes you go into places where say it's a creepy house and you're like, there's something off here. Or did you can get that in environments where it also feels homey, or was there something like that with her in there as you guys started to make progress, or was it just kind of what happened?
I think it's what happened. I think I have a chapter of the book called a Silent Scream," and I think it
Mhm.
was a cry for help. She wanted love back into her life and certainly back into our home. But it was interesting. So when she was in this comatose state, she occasionally did open her eyes, but she didn't look at anybody in the room. She looked in the corner of the room,
Mm.
then closed her eyes, and then but she would do that repeatedly. It would be the same spot in the room. And later on, when she woke up, and my sister, who's a born again Christian, was asking her, "Mom, what were you looking at? What was in there? What's in the corner of that room?" And my mother wouldn't answer. It was like a secret or something.
Mhm.
Then my sister said, "Was it God?" And my mother's demeanor changed. And so she knew she tapped something. So she said, "Did he say something to you?" And my mother shook her head, yes. And she said, "What did he say?" And my mother whispered, "Be patient." So
Oh,
that's
that just
certainly
gave me
interesting.
chills a little bit. That was
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. Um,
Yeah. So that is, yeah, it wasn't her time. It,
wow.
and I think part of that again was all of us coming back, and we kind of helped her say, "Listen, we love you. We want you to stay around a bit."
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that was a lovely, whether it was a vision or really did happen to her. Who cares? It helped her wake up, which was lovely.
Yeah.
Um, and and then yeah, but I hadn't been home. I knew she was back when, she woke up and her color comes back and stuff, but I hadn't been back for several months because she was just grumpy. I said she became like Archie Bunker. I didn't want
Mm.
around her because she would go into these melancholy moods and made sure everybody around her had a horrible time. And so I stayed away. And so when she woke up after with the pumpkin pie, she looks at me and she says, "Well, I haven't seen you in a long while." So when she started guilt tripping, I knew, okay, she's back.
Oh, well.
No more pumpkin pie for you.
Right. Yeah. We're giving you porridge and Brussels sprouts or
Not the Brussels sprout.
was she, I guess with that, and at some point I have to ask you about the commode, the cup of tea on the commode, but w- was she, even though she was back, was she crotchety through the end?
No, not really.
Okay.
She was very soft spoken. She didn't talk a lot. My mother was a real chatterbox. My dad said, "Boy, this woman could strike up a conversation with a tree." She was very social and very cool. So she was very, she didn't talk very much, um, which was fine. I mean, that's one of the things you have to adjust to because they're still your loved one, it's still your mother, but they're going to be a little slower. There's going to be fewer words, and they're not going to be the same person. But inside, they certainly are, and they still deserve dignity and love and respect. And so, as let's say the caregiver, you have to learn patience and empathy and all that business
Mhm.
um, to be there and really support them. There were some times she was a bit stubborn and not so much grumpy, but there are times where she did shut down, and it very much frustrated me. But again, and I had moments where I wasn't certainly the perfect parent, so I had moments where I said a few choice words, and my mother hated swearing, so I knew that would upset her. And but parenting's tough, and at one point, she said, "I don't like you swearing," and I said, "I know, Mom, but this parenting thing is hard." And she says, "I know, well, never swore." And she raised 6 kids, so and she never did swear. She would say things like nincompoop and fed up. And when she was really angry, which she got a couple times in my teen years, she'd say, "You make me want to spit." And that was like, oh my gosh, you've hit the limit.
Yeah.
My dad, he never swore either, but it seemed like food came to mind because he would call people chowderhead or "you're full of soup."
Yeah.
The best one was "get the ham out of here." This is what we do up in. So I didn't follow that trend. I go right with the swear words if I have to.
That's funny. This weird coincidence. So, and this is something I was kind of curious to talk to you about. I guess one of the many things I was curious to talk to you about, part of it is the decline and watching your parents decline. My parents had me very young, so my mom's 49 and my dad's 53 right now. But my mom and I have a disease called Huntington's disease, and she is, to my understanding, like in the progression of the disease, and it is a nasty disease that basically slowly turns you into a vegetable before then, pneumonia or something else finishes you off. It's nasty, but her and I haven't had much of there's been basically zero contact intentionally for the past year and a half. And this is I'm not talking shit about my mom here. I'm going to very intentionally stay away from, or I guess if you have questions, I'll answer them, but this is not the point of me sharing this. I just recently saw her on Monday, actually. So we had a childhood dog who we've had since I was 15, and she had to have him put down. And I'm so thankful for the fact that she reached out to me and let me know that he was passing. So I got to go over there and be with him while he died because she had him euthanized in her home. And so it was the first time we really exchanged anything in the past year and a half. And it was obvious, as you can imagine, a very emotional time too. But her and I had this conversation, but it was funny. I think both of us have grown in the past year and a half. So there was some of that refamiliarizing a little bit in the sense of things have changed, and it's been, we were together for a couple hours, like I said, during a very intimate time. But her and she was always like, she hated swearing when my dad would do it. And then even as when I would come home for like pre-deployment leave from the Marines, I very much still had the mouth that you would expect of a Marine. It was F this, F that. Instead of saying, I'm saying fuck. It was all of it. But her and I just had this conversation on Monday when we were waiting for, the euthanization or the vet to come to euthanize our dog. Was like, she's like, you know what? Sometimes a swear word is just what you need, essentially, where it's like, sometimes fuck is warranted. And like, this is one of those times, or it's, but for your mom to say that to you, did you ever have kids yourself?
No, no.
Okay.
My first kid was my mom.
That is so funny. Like, I mean, not funny because of the circumstances, but like that comment, it's like she'd been waiting to say that her whole life. Like, now you get it.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, knowing, even though she'd come back and had the will to be there again, like you commented on her, she wasn't so talkative, and the fact that you recognize that they are getting older, and that is part of that kind of regression near the end. And just as your brain declines over time, like what what is that like, knowing, I mean, yes, everyone knows everyone deals with that stage eventually of their parents getting old, but like you were there in the most hands-on way possible during those end time. And I don't know how long that period was once she came out of the hospice facility, but mentally, that what is that like?
Well, I'd have to say that the acting helped
Okay.
because you're seeing, at least for a son, I'm seeing my mother naked for the first time, and you're seeing what the years have done to her, what gravity has done. You're seeing all the scars from the various surgeries over the years, and a little uncomfortable. But I didn't want my mother to feel uncomfortable, so I wanted to keep that out of the room as best I could. So I jumped into the role as the caregiver and said, "I've got work to do, so I got to get over it and on with it, and do the work as the caregiver." Um, so that helped with that. But also, there's so much to do. I guess as any parent, that you don't have time until maybe later at night when you're alone in bed or something, or sitting there with certainly a glass of wine or something. But there's so much to do. I gave her sponge baths twice a day, and you're changing the diaper several times a day, and you're doing all the cooking and the shopping, and while she was there, she was like a child, so she slept a lot during the day, and
Okay.
so I not only wanted to return dignity to her. I bought her a new wardrobe. That was I didn't want my mother looking like a little old lady, so I bought some nice clothes for her, and I said, if you want to cheer anybody up, a new wardrobe will do that, especially at
Yeah.
night. And then I invented what I called the Day of Beauty. She had six kids and she worked full time, but she treated herself to a trip to the beauty salon once a week to get a shampoo and set and get her nails done. She had gorgeous nails; they were like the crown jewels. He's the She was a hand model in her late teens and early 20s, and
Okay.
these things were precious. And whenever she would come visit me in LA, I would take her to my friend Stan's place in Beverly Hills for the movie star treatment. And I knew she loved that. And, but at this point, I have no idea when the last time she was at a beauty parlor. Her hair didn't look great. It was very long again, which was nice.
Mhm.
But no makeup. Her nails were done, but nothing else. So she didn't look great. I thought she could have been better taken care of. So I created this day of beauty where I would uh, uh, soak her feet in Epsom salt. I would shampoo and wash her hair, all while she's sitting on the commode. And when she finished her business there, I would give her a full body massage. And as we get older, also your skin gets a lot thinner and doesn't retain moisture, so it gets very itchy and dry.
Mhm.
So body lotion was a critical thing. So full body massage, and then you do the baby powder and the new diaper. She picked out her new wardrobe, and I got her up and into the wheelchair, and then I would blow dry her hair and put it in either ponytail or sometimes a braid for bonus points. Uh, I learned a lot more growing up with three sisters with long hair than just to put the toilet seat down.
Oh.
So it was. I felt good doing that because it was. I think more of a maybe a romantic approach, and it was funny because my sisters didn't do this stuff. They see her
Oh,
mother, and I guess they don't see mom is not looking great.
yeah.
So the son, I guess that was my job anyway. So I did that, and they all appreciated it. I'm sure. And then I would do her nails, and I had to be very careful with those. And then I'd give her some lipstick to match the new nails. And I didn't think that much of it. I thought this is a nice thing. I get her cleaned and dressed up and new clothes and blah blah blah. And as I'm wheeling her into the kitchen for breakfast, we pass a big dining room mirror, and I park her in front of that mirror, and she looks at her reflection, and she's just beaming. And I lean into her, cheek to cheek, and said, "Who is that pretty girl?" And it was just her reaction was fabulous. And I just said, boy, this small gesture meant so much to her. And it probably meant more to me because her reaction was just, it was gold. And so every day I parked her in front of that mirror and asked her the same question because I wanted her to know she was certainly, to me, beautiful, but she also loved what she saw. And
Yeah.
not the last time she looked in even a mirror or last time she looked and liked what she saw, but what she saw that day she loved. And
That's adorable.
it was fabulous. Anyway, so those are things that maybe being a son helped me make that decision for her because I took, well, it's not all great because the romantic approach. So uh, while she slept a lot, I decided to renovate the entire house.
Uh,
And so whenever I'd finish a certain part, I would carry her down. The basement was the first thing. So I'd carry her down to the basement. She loved it. And when I finished the upstairs bathroom, I put a big bathtub in there and said, "Would you like to christen the new bathroom with a bubble bath?" And she said, "Yeah." Again, I don't know the last time she took a bath.
yeah.
So I gave her a big bubble bath and I took a picture of her. Again, she's beaming from ear to ear, and I put the bubbles up so they're covering any particular spots, and
Yeah.
and it was great. And then she passes out. And I'm thinking, oh great, I tried to do a nice thing and I killed my mom, but at least she smelled good.
Yeah.
I thought again she had a wicked sense of humor, so I thought she might be joking. So I'm tapping her on the cheek and go, well, "Come on, what are you doing?" And she was gone, breathing but out. And so I pulled her out of the tub. I dried her off, carried her downstairs, and put her to bed. And I called up a nurse, and they said she fainted. You left her in the hot water too long, and her blood pressure went down. So I stayed with her. She woke up about 30 minutes later. Had no memory of fainting, but she loved the new bathtub. So for me, it was a win-win. So uh, wasn't all perfect being the parent with the romantic approach or something, but yeah, she survived that one, and so did I, because that'd be a tough one to explain to my siblings.
Yeah. I swear I was doing something nice. I swear she was in the bathtub before.
She smells good. She smells good.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Was, I mean, did Did you ever have I know your sister had the conversation with her about while she was unresponsive, but when she would pop her eyes open, did you ever inquire about that just to see?
I didn't about not the God up in the corner, but we
Mhm.
talk about some things. I didn't. Again, she didn't talk very much. I'm sure she had to think about it.
Yeah.
There was a point later on. So our adventures, I call it, was 3.5 years. So into the probably the third year or late in the second year, she did have some things where she said, uh, I want you to take my earrings off. Now, she had pierced ears for my whole life and never saw her without earrings. And she says, I want to take my earrings off. And I said, why do you want to take those off? She goes, I want to save them for heaven. I said,
Mm.
yeah, but they're going to be safer if you keep them in your ears and you could have them in heaven. And she says, okay. And so that was one time. There was another time where she said, "Oh," she said, "I'm going." And at this point, when she said she's go, I don't know if she's peeing or what, but
Yeah.
"What do you mean you're going? Where are you going?" And she goes, "I'm going." And I said, You're going? Why are you going?" She goes, I said, "Are you where?" And she goes, "Well, I'm not going to hell." And I said, "No, of course not. But why now?" She says, "Well, and she couldn't finish the thought. But it was like, so she had little spots. But I'll tell you what's interesting, and it's all. So we'll get to the title and the photograph of the front of the book. My mother had a number of strange visions, but she had one recurring one. And outside her bedroom window, there would be this steady parade of children, boys and girls, all around 8 years old, in their Sunday best. They just got out of church, and the girls would carry flowers and the boys balloons, and they would march by my mom's. We lived at a dead end, so around the cul-de-sac, we were the second house in from the right, from the end on the right. So they would circle the roundabout and they'd come by my mom's window and wave to her, and she'd wave back. And she would describe this in great detail, this parade of children. And that's the only vision I think that she had a number of times.
Hmm.
And uh, while we are um, while I'm writing the book, I wasn't sure about the title. Actually, the original title was going to be Patient, which I still think is a good title. Uh,
Seems fitting.
um, and then, but so I'm writing the book, and the opening chapter is that vision that she saw of these kids coming by. And my sister, out of the blue, sent me a bunch of black and white photos from her side of the family. Now, both of her parents died before she was married, so I didn't know that much about them. Again, my mother didn't tell a lot of stories because there was the suicides on that side.
Yeah.
And but one of the pictures was a little girl on a bench with a white frilly dress and a little pixie haircut, holding flowers with patent leather shoes and little lace socks that would have been perfect for that parade. And it was a picture of my mother when she was about 8 years old.
Hmm.
And I think that my mother, I guess we all have a time where we're thinking about heaven and what is the I guess the age that we want to see ourselves in heaven. And I think my mom at 8 years old might have been the happiest time of her life. And that's why she kept seeing that parade of children. I think that when she left this earth, I have my own version of that parade at the end, where my mother actually is anchoring that parade because dressed just like those kids and she has the flowers. And she wanted those earrings to be on her ears when she got to heaven. And so it's very interesting. So that picture was perfect. And I have no idea how my sister came up with it or where she found it, but that is on the cover of the book because that was a very important vision for her, and it was perfect. The cup of tea and the Commode thing. So my mother's favorite beverage was hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. And sometimes, every day she's on the Commode several times. And sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So, kind of as a joke, I think that the first time I asked her, I said, "Would you like a cup of tea while we're waiting?" And she said, "Sure." So I made her a cup of tea and served it, while she's sitting on the Commode, and it became a hit. So that became part of our morning ritual. Uh, so I thought that was an even catchier title.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
voila.
was was there a, I guess I kind of had to experience this on my own hand after I shot myself. I had to relearn how to do literally everything, like from brushing my teeth to walking and all that. And for a time, I didn't even know that I was blind, even though I was that out of it. But even as I kind of learned everything, like I my parents were there for me every day in the hospital, literally every day. And they got stuck with the duties of having at the time, a 23-year-old man child again, and wiping me in the bathroom and stuff like that. That was a horrifying experience for me to be like leaning into my dad while he's helping hold me up and wiping my ass. Like, with,
Yeah.
oh, was that something I'm guessing that's something you guys had to navigate, where your mom couldn't believe her son's doing this for her. And also, that's it's a weird thing for you to be doing too, like a very intimate thing, in general, all of it, whether it be the bathing or everything. Was there growing pains with all of that stuff?
Again, that was the uncomfortable stuff that I had to rely on my acting, saying, I am now hurt.
Yeah.
So get over it and get on with it. And she was not uncomfortable at all. It was very funny because my dad died 14 years earlier.
Mhm.
And my dad wanted to hold on to his what little dignity he had left. And the last time we got him on the Commode, my mother was kind of really stepped up for him because she was no spring chicken either. At
Mhm.
and she put up with help. She was the caregiver, so she might have inspired me to do this. But so I was there with him, and I'm holding.
All right, everyone, we're back. I don't know what happened there. It's horrendously windy here. I don't know if something happened, but we got disconnected for a second. Mark is going to begin again with the story.
Okay. So my dad wanted to hold on to the little bit of dignity he had left, and so he insisted on wiping his own butt. So I was with him for his last 8 days. So a couple of days before he passed, and he had a great sense of humor. And we get him off the Commode, and he's very heavy at this point. He was in the final stages of heart disease, so he had about 40 pounds of water weight, especially his legs. So I'm holding this guy up, was now about 200 pounds. And my mother standing next to him with the toilet paper. And I guess they had this routine down. Anyway, when he's fair, he turns to her and says, "Give me 2 sheets." And my mother says, "Just 2 sheets?" And my father says, "I'm very accurate." And I almost dropped the guy. All three of us just burst out laughing, and it was the best. I mean, it was sad, but it was just it was a great laugh that we all shared at the time. And sure enough, he wiped his own butt, and that was it. So no one ever wiped his butt. With my mom, it was like whatever. No, she was fine. She loved being pampered. She just so I had to do all that stuff and with tender loving care, of course.
Yeah.
But what was funny about that, and I have a chapter in the book about it, is so about several months into this. Now I'm wiping her butt several times a day, and out of the 6 kids, I'm the only one whose name she couldn't remember. So I have a chapter in the book. Does wiping butt cause amnesia? And so I have evidence. In fact, it does.
Need to submit it for peer review.
Yeah, I think anyway, that could be a whole scientific paper. So, I went in one morning and she says, so what is it I call you? And I said, you're kidding, right? And she says, no. I said, name your kids. Laurel, Michael, Carol, David, DC. And no clue.
As she's looking at you.
Yeah. I'm Mark. She goes, oh, Mark, with a K? I said, yes, you named me. I'm your favorite son. And she said, I don't have favorites. I say, you have a favorite to forget.
Yeah.
Instead of getting mad or taking that personally, what I did is I wrote my name in big block letters on a piece of paper and taped it to the ceiling. So the next few mornings, when I went into her room, and I'd say, good morning, and she would look up to the ceiling and get my name, and then very proudly look at me and go, good morning, Mark.
So she remembered.
No, she read it. She didn't remember.
Uh,
After a few weeks, it was fun. But that was some of the things that you got to roll with it, because again, they're still your mother. They love you, but they're not the same. They're certainly not 100% anymore. So you find the humor in it, and that was one of my goals too. I wanted to make her laugh at least once a day, and then she ended up making me laugh quite a bit as well.
That's beautiful, man. And awesome. Also, you're a great storyteller. And even I saw when I found you online and was reading some of your stuff, like it's very, even though it's very clear. And obviously the awards alone would have told someone that you're a gifted writer, but like your, even your writing, just kind of summarizing yourself, like was very, it's obvious that you have a knack for all of this. And so the fact that you could do it verbally and through the written word is just, it's really cool. And I think it's just such a cool thing to have as like an ode to your mom, also for your family to enjoy. And just, I, and I've noticed in writing my own book, like this makes you think about things on a different level too. And
Yeah, they say, especially when you're writing memoir, you discover a lot about yourself.
yeah, and also yeah, and like understanding even not just what you think more, but how and why. And it's this very impactful thing. So as we kind of wrap this up, unless there's something that I've missed asking you that you would like to talk about, I mean, is that I know you mentioned that you're gonna write the same thing for your dad. Is there anything, I guess on one hand, have you started that, but also, like with that's on that same note of understanding things more and like thinking and pondering on things on such a deeper level when you write about stuff like that, like in it is are you apprehensive if you haven't started, or are you apprehensive to start? Because I'd imagine writing some of that stuff with your mom was also painful because those are hard times. I mean, you're losing your mother.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my dad's book, I have quite a bit of it done. I took, again, with him, I only had 8 days, but I took a lot of notes.
Mm.
And we had a lot of, as in a cup of tea, there's a lot of backstory that helped justify why I did what I did. And
Yeah.
certainly fun stories about my mom, and my dad certainly has fun stories as well. Um, before I gave the final draft to my publisher, I cut out about 4,000 words that I thought would be better suited for my dad's book. So that was a big chunk. So that was the start. But now we're going on like 28 years that my dad passed. So I have again notes, and then I'm sharing some stories with my younger sister, who was there for a good part of those days as well. So she has notes as well, so I can run some of this stuff by her. Um, but it's interesting. So the book came out on Mother's Day, 2023.
Okay.
And I wanted to certainly record the audio book as well, but I couldn't get through it without bawling, especially with family. I just,
Yeah.
even some of the chapters that are not emotional, I would find myself losing it.
Yeah.
And so I said, boy, I need some distance. So it wasn't until about 5 or 6 months later where I set up a studio here in France, and recorded the book. And during those 6 months, though, I had time to look at the book with fresh eyes. I made some corrections. that I heard about from my siblings. Um, but also, you're looking at it from a new point of view. And one of the revelations that I came up with is, if you read the book, it sounds like I went back and I rescued my mom, which in a sense I did. But upon reflection, I think my mother actually rescued me. Um, she gave me this opportunity, whether conscious or unconscious, to do something really important in my life. And at that point, I don't think I did. I've accomplished a lot of stuff, had certainly had a lot of adventures, but this was the most important thing I've done. And luckily, my mom gave me that opportunity, and luckily, I was smart enough to jump on it. So that was a lovely revelation, and I thank my mom every day for that, because for her to leave this earth the way she did, similar to my dad. I was with both folks when they passed. They died in their beds, in their homes, with loved ones with them. And it was a great way to go. Neither one was in any kind of incredible pain. Mom had a little bit. My dad, he had to be maybe medicated a little bit more, but no morphine or anything like that. With mom, she had a little bit of that, but it was a lovely way to go, and it certainly made it uh, easier for me, and I think my siblings also, to say goodbye, because uh, she had a lovely parting. And
Yeah, it
so,
almost is closure in a way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Did you did you ever preceding all of that, did you ever feel or was the idea that you had never done anything important something that kind of loomed over you at all? Or has this all been in reflection?
I think in reflection, because I was too busy.
Yeah.
At that point, my acting career was kind of on the wane, because you're getting older, and I wasn't a big star and didn't have a great agent and all that stuff. I hope she's not listening. And then, but I had this snack food company that my brother and I started to honor my dad.
Mhm.
Had this, he invented this half popcorn uh, snack back in 1963. And it was like a family snack, a family secret. And I revived it in the early 90s, and kept my dad abreast of what I was doing. I said, I'm going to get this out in stores. And he was all for it. And unfortunately, he passed a year before we were on the store shelves. But we built that into a national brand. It was the snack of the day on the Rachel Ray show, and that got us actual national distribution. And it was a great run for a while. And at that point, I had that. That was very important, because it was not only a family thing, but it was one of my successful less than nonprofits. And it was a family thing, because my brother and I were doing it together, and the other family was very supportive, and so that was certainly very important. It's sad that is, since we let it kind of go, because mom took precedence at that point, and yeah. But I think the 8 days with my dad, and then the 3.5 years out with my mom, were more important than even that thing. So
Yeah. Well, that's I was curious to ask because you've like definitely been very successful in your life. And I had I'm not going to drag you down a rabbit hole, but I'm glad you gave me a little insight into the company because when you brought that up earlier, I wanted to ask, but we were so early. I was like, I can't derail this because we have so much ground to cover, but it's just even that side of things is fascinating to me. You've had a really, I mean, you're aware of this. You've had a very interesting career of things, but also this is just these are such just they certainly meaningful. Not to I'm not trying to be corny and use the same word that you used, but like certainly meaningful and I'm sure very impactful stories for other people to hear. I mean, if it wasn't, you wouldn't have received all of these or not rewards, awards that you have already. So it's just I hope you're proud of yourself, man. It's so neat.
well, it's what's lovely. I mean, their words are lovely too, but it's the the notes and the emails I've received from people who've read the book. Some are people who knew me in, I guess, my childhood, and knew my family, siblings, or my parents, and things like that. And some of them are just from strangers or people I don't know, just lovely. So this story. I guess that's what I'm more proud of because it's touching a lot of people around the world too. Now it's going to be published in China and Taiwan and South Korea. So far, we're going after other countries, but those were the three international ones so far. And it's just it's a cool. So my mom is still, I guess, teaching and parenting through these stories, which is lovely.
That's also kind of crazy. Those are what you said, China, Korea, and where, or South Korea and where?
Taiwan. We just got the contract for complex Chinese characters. I think the simplified are complex enough, but
Yeah.
it's a different language, so it's a different publisher. So that's fun.
Oh.
So
Well, yeah, that's so interesting because those are entirely foreign language. I mean, entirely separate alphabets, like,
yeah, I will not be able to proofread.
no, but that is just, it's so awesome. And I do wonder, now that we know wiping butts does cause amnesia, maybe that's why we don't have formed memories until we're like toddlers and are potty trained because I've had too much about wiping going on. So,
Well,
but
thank you for bringing us to a new level.
yeah, I'm just doing my role in contributing to the science. But
Oh, and here's how Hollywood's coming back. So I've had some people in Hollywood express some interest for this to make this a movie, which is fun. So I've written this also, and we'll see what happens with that. But
awesome.
so that was cool. Full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle.
And you'll have to let me know. People watching the movie when it does come out will be eating your snack food that you developed. That was your dad's snack. But to, uh,
Hey,
to add another bow on it. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on here, man. I was not so patiently waiting for this conversation, and it was everything that I hoped for and more. So thank you so much. Please tell everyone where they can go to find a cup of tea on the Commode and anything else that you're doing.
well, if they Google a cup of tea on the Commode, we're everywhere. That's the website. It's we have a YouTube channel that just reached 25,000 views. I just received a thing today saying yeah, also on YouTube, so that's cool. But we have TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook, of course, and all that business. So, but if they Google that and if they want to get in contact with me, it's a cup of tea on the Commode at gmail.com. There's 4 versions of the book, all available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and stuff. So there's the paperback, large print paperback, ebook, and of course the audio book. If they want to hear my lovely voice for 7.5 hours, I add some sound effects and stuff too, which are kind of fun. So
Some Law and Order sound effects.
so there you go. No, but I think I have on the website I do have a bonus material section which may have the Law and Order. I know it has some a lot of things that we mentioned in the book that they didn't get to see or read about. So I have some of those. So the website's kind of fun to explore. But yeah, somebody in the Commode will find me somehow.
Great. Awesome. You certainly don't need any help with getting more word in that direction, but I'm sure people are going to go check it out after this. So thank you again, man. This was awesome. I appreciate you.
My pleasure, and also you have given me a reward because I say, whenever I get to share my mom's story, that's your gift to me. So I thank you for the early Christmas gift.
Yeah, you're welcome. Merry Christmas. And thank you everyone at home for listening. Excuse me, to another episode of Going In Blind. We've covered some groundbreaking science here. Very, very just neat life, both of Mark and even the end years of his mother, and just you know, uh, uh, as always, these are powerful conversations, but I think it's an important one to share around. As usual, find another curious mind who needs to listen to this and send it their way, and then go check out Mark's work everywhere. I know I will be going and listening to Law and Order Sport Utility Vehicle, but I will see you next time.